What's your name, slave?
Spartacus.
Spartacus is actually Kubrick's biggest, most clear, and paradoxically most overlooked film. It's about slaves and masters. The fact that the film is most clear and most overlooked is not a coincidence. Most people love endless talks about Eyes Wide Shut, secret societies, about space odyssey, space traveling and artificial intellect, secret societies in the Shining Hotel. All very complex stuff. They don't want to think about the simple stuff like society in general and relations of power, things that directly concern them. That's exactly what slaves in the Spartacus film are about. They don't want to question their own reality. Instead, they prefer to talk about injustice conspiracy and dream about something that just cannot happen in real life. Their project, if they had any project, as a project means that there is a standing point and there is a distant object one has plans to reach. Their dream about a society of equality will never work. It will collapse out of inner conflicts and chains of betrayals as soon as the outer enemy, the only thing that holds them together, the thing that identifies them as a class, disappears. And indeed, Spartacus was betrayed by his council, at least twice, when he has Spartacus sold out to Crassus and when he disobeyed Spartacus's order, trying to kill Spartacus.
My last order. Obey it.
In hope to save his ass when it's all over. The Spartacus slave rebellion happened more than 2,000 years ago. But nothing has really changed from that time. You don't call slaves as slaves anymore. We have a lot of different words now. But that is the only social progress humanity has reached. The word progress is very questionable here, as slaves can't even identify themselves as slaves anymore. Even this tiny bit of self-consciousness has been alienated from them. Some might say that people nowadays live much better lives, and it's our achievement. There is no health-killing work like we see in Spartacus, that we are not like them. Not true. Coal miners, slaves at the Apple computer factory, all that is still here. Or that slaves lived in terrible conditions, in cages like animals, wearing rags, starving, etc. Also not true. Slaves generally lived in pair with free people. Or now that you can't sell a person as property. Or now that all have access to our holy cow, science education, how planets revolve around the stars, how to extract square roots and do math, how to make design drawings. Not true, since Plato already made scientific education available for slaves and, actually, was their main prerogative. A servant must have the technical base to serve his master. According to Aristotle, the ideological founder of Western culture, the pillar of the original democracy, a slave is a talking tool. Education makes this tool sharp and precise. The life of a slave generally was not very different from the life of a free person. It was not about cruel and baseless social inequality. Here is a picture from an ancient vase. 5 persons in a music class. One of them is a slave. All 5 have decent clothes, haircuts, and healthy bodies. No signs of starvation. None of them have scars or signs of bad treatment. All of them have access to musical education. So who is the slave here? The one who stands? Were slaves not allowed to sit like masters? No. The shaved one? Were slaves not allowed to style their hair and were forced to look like animals? No. So who is the slave here, if they all look the same and have access to goods? This one, with crossed and spread legs, he sits immodestly like a big boss, enjoying himself out of nothing. Which is comfort. Enjoys making himself an idiot, as one is not supposed to sit like that in a civil society. Ignoring the symbolic order in a public place. According to Hegel, the whole slavery thing and the symbolic order were created to give a slave a chance to survive. But one should remember that chance is not the same thing as survival. Imagine a situation, a forest or savanna, a long dry season, 2 persons and just 1 deer left to hunt. Both persons need food for survival. One decided to attack the deer, to risk his life. His life versus deer's life. The other one doesn't want to risk his life. It is too valuable for him. He is not ready. He has plans for tomorrow, and he makes plans for the future, which is just dreaming, as he won't survive without food. The first man gets the deer, ensures his own and his family's survival. Now the other man becomes somewhat like a slave, totally resentful, as much as dependent on the first's mercy. Realistically, the other man is dead, but yet he is alive, partially in the world of dead, partially in the world of alive. The symbolic order has been established. This order are their relations. Their relations have roots in the real event, but the main body of them is in another register, which can make the relations look independent and arbitrary. But it's just a start of master-slave dialectics. Roughly talking, later the relations described above become conceptualized. Being a master becomes a category, a privilege. The proto-right political wing is being established. And since being a master becomes a privilege, not just an organic circumstance, the privilege becomes a subject of alienation. That means the privilege can be given to someone or taken away voluntarily. And since it can be taken away, someone might start to want to take it back. The proto-left wing establishes. And so on, forgetting what it was all about, bogging down in imaginary things. A man became a slave not because of cunning social hierarchy, but because of how he renders the real, which makes his character. You can't reset history. Even a total nuclear war that many were dreaming about in the middle of the last century probably wouldn't help. The important thing is that slaves back in Spartacus's time were not recruited into the army. They were out of the war. War was for warriors, for men. Slaves were considered as never grown-up kids, incapable to do certain things. And there were not all these child-loving rhetorics we have for the last 150 years. If a slave had contemporary modes of expressing back then, he would say something like, "I'm in my 30s, but still feel like a kid. And when I was younger, I thought, yeah, when you're 30, that's when you're a proper adult. But I still don't feel like one, and I feel nervous and vulnerable at times. Yet I think my exclusive opinion matters." Nowadays, one rarely gets into the situation where he has to put his life versus deer's life. There are not enough deer left, though, and too many supportive things have arisen like the state, which some people can't wait to ruin. But a life-defining moment still occurs with everyone, usually in early childhood, when one has to face the reality. And from that point, contemporary men, just like ancient slaves, live in debt, live in guilt, totally resentful, partially alive, and partially dead. There was a creative, even magical attempt to solve that problem. Christianity, the religion of slaves, where the Grand Master and owner of all slaves forgives all debts and gives his life for lives of each of his slaves. But it didn't work out. That band-aid that holds a slave's anxiety is gone. But the master's whip is gone too. What do they have to do now? The rhetorical question many thinkers and philosophers ask and try to solve. Evaluation of Aristotle's thought shows that a slave is a slave not because he is an animal, like late Christians thought, pulling out their idea from the Bible where Adam is the first human, and all who was there before him are just animals, but because a slave, for some reason, is unable to realize the grounds of his existence. So the issues ancient slaves faced are still relevant, and it's very interesting what Stanley Kubrick had to say about that. Starting from the main characters, as gentlemen, let's start with women first. We can clearly see that in this line of prostitutes, the one called Varinia is the horniest one. Her long and complex hairdo sells her off. It means she works hard to sexually attract as many men as possible. Other women in the line behave this way too, but not as hard as Varinia. It is their sincere understanding of free will. No one can make any of them do what they don't want to do. No one even would do this, as men respect a right dame and are even, on contrary, ready to support one in her decent and honest endeavors. But this line of women hates to study, doesn't want to become anything more than a prostitute. Prostitution for them is a way to ignore a teacher, to plunge their heads into the sand. They stay voluntarily as slaves. All of them are resentful, but this one is the most. Varinia wants to kill her masters as no one else. That's why she plays such innocence. And most of the viewers buy onto this, ignoring the evidence that a woman always presents the opposite of what she really thinks. But her hairdo sells her off, that she is spiteful like a scorpion and offers herself as an object. Moreover, in order to become more demanded, that's how she thinks people become demanded. She makes efforts to make other people give her gifts like perfume and makeup.
I believe that girl smells of perfume.
You can't keep slaves from stealing these days unless you chain them.
When a slave's as pretty as she doesn't have to steal. An arrangement is made.
We already know for what talent she gets the gifts, but who can give her such gifts in the camp she lives? Slaves don't have access to such things in the camp. It can be only guards that go to the city and come back. So, she sleeps with gladiators at night and sleeps with guards at day. That means the guards that fall under such a woman are trash, and they will lose to the gladiators in case of rebellion.
Call out the garrison, I don't trust this lot. And I don't trust this lot. And I don't trust this lot.
That's exactly what happened. Half have fallen dead, the other half run away. All that describes Varinia as the horniest prostitute among others. The itch in her crotch is constant. Where does this itch come from? We already said in a previous video. Interestingly, that itch has a special name in culture. It's called being butthurt. It's not exactly the same thing. It is part of intuitive knowledge, how the collective subconscious recognizes the phenomenon. When a person is butthurt, he experiences a toxic, envious, jealous irritation towards someone. But that is exactly what resentment means. It is a slave's main sentiment, his only reality. So in case Varinia ends up in a place where she won't be able to sleep with everyone around, she will run away to a place where she can. That is why she runs away from Crassus when he bought her and was planning to keep her in his mansion.
Send her to Rome with your steward the next time he has to go there. He leaves tomorrow, and the girl with him.
Where elite guards wouldn't allow themselves to sleep with her, and where she would have chances to meet other teachers and good men. She is not a stupid slut as misogynists may think of her. She understands all that and runs away to spend her time with the scum of the earth under the bushes. Guess in exchange for what services she will get food there. As we said, a woman always plays the opposite of what she really thinks. So later, she will tell the slaves that she ran away because she wants freedom. Freedom in her type of men meaning of freedom. But there are always 3 points of view on everything. For example, this episode. Children and mentally impaired people say that Varinia is insulted for being sexually objectified. That is why she pours the wine on Roman legate. But it's just her trick. She wants him to stop talking and thinking, to drive him into emotion, and of course to play stupid because stupid girls are sexier. Again, she offers herself as an object and does what every person does when offers her or himself as an object of sexual pleasure. Plays stupid, spills wine, drops a handkerchief, joins subculture. In other words, she makes the others not take her seriously. Varinia's behavior is typical, but the events she involved into are not typical at all. First, Roman Senator Gracchus gives her freedom and 2 million sesterti to her escort.
Here's 2 million sesterces.
2 million.
Articles of freedom from the woman.
2 million is a crazy sum. She doesn't cost so much on the free market. Her price is much less than 2,000.
I have spent quite a lot of money on her.
Yes, I've no doubt of it. 2,000 sesterces.
2,000? She'll be waiting at your litter.
Why did he do it? Gracchus is a very complex character. For slaves and plebeians, he is a rich, fat womanizer surrounded by women. But fourth-level initiate, Batiatus, his pupil, sees that that is just a mask. Here he shows that he is aware of his mask.
It's well known that even your groom and your butler are women.
I'm the most virtuous man in Rome. I have a promiscuous nature, and unlike these aristocrats, I will not take a marriage vow which I know that by nature will prevent me from keeping.
It must be tantalizing to be surrounded by so much purity.
It is.
Gracchus is a master of Julius Caesar after all.
So now we deal with pirates, bargain with criminals.
Don't you be so stiff-necked about it. Politics is a practical profession. If a criminal has what you want, you do business with him.
There were just a few persons in human history like Caesar that had the impact that he did. 2 to 3, not more. And Gracchus is his teacher.
You know Gracchus is my friend. I won't betray him.
Notice this bust in Batiatus's mansion. The only bust he has. Batiatus respects him and is willing to give up all his property to help him initiate Caesar, besides being such a cheapskate, as most people see him. Being a cheapskate is his personal mask. He is a trickster just like Gracchus. We already talked about masks in our previous videos. The mask is a special technique for initiates only, where they pick what they are, what to be, for the interest of the collective mind. This technique is simple but little known. Only great directors and writers like Stanley Kubrick have managed to show it. The thing is that the general public unintentionally does the opposite of what an initiate does.
The one with the acorns and some chairs in the atrium. Second best wine. No, the best, but small goblets. Right, but small goblets.
The key word here, unintentionally. For example, let's take a detective, a person that has to discover human secrets. People generally are not willing to share their secrets, but if the detective is an initiate of proper level and has a mask of a pedant, and formalist people would unintentionally try to prove that his lifestyle is wrong and express that verbally and non-verbally, casually speaking what's on their
I
minds.
can't think of anyone who wanted her dead except for me.
Another person's beauty suddenly destroys your life.
He's not likely to be constant, is that not so?
No, that is not so. It's only her. Nobody else could have changed him. Nobody. I wish so much that she was dead.
Or if an initiate needs his surrounding to organize their thoughts, he presents himself as an imbecile, perfunctory, and the surroundings start unintentionally to prove him that his sketchiness is wrong.
What are you doing? What's it look like I'm doing? Fighting the power.
Not like you, House. True.
That he should be more organized and thoughtful. It is simple, but it's for initiates only. It comes as you reach a specific level of consciousness, so there is no point of acting like that, unless you've got to that level. Otherwise, it will only get you in trouble. Back to Batiatus. He is an initiate, and at his school, he works to lift his students from the slave state. It's not a simple task, and of course, Batiatus is interested in cooperation with decent men, not with the ones who seek for bounty only. That is why he has to play cheapskate. In this episode, it looks like he is just whining about the expenses.
11 miles through this disastrous heat. And the cost of hiring an escort. Ruinous. I've wasted both my time and my money. Tell me the truth.
I think we have a few.
Sun's over there. I could pay these people.
But it's only how it looks. He is not suffering from greed. It's a mask. Let's say if Batiatus weren't an initiate and were thinking about the profits of his company only, just as his business partner. They would both fall into greed-based relations, and Batiatus wouldn't be able to pick the right criminals for his school.
Marcellus, there they are. They're a dirty-looking lot, but it's the best I could find.
No one else could have made so fine a choice.
Batiatus was seeking the most notorious and toxic criminals. Spartacus suits to that perfectly.
The best thing about him, he hamstrung a guard with him not more than an hour ago.
Hamstrung? How marvelous. I wish I'd been here. I'll take him. Let's look at some of the others.
Back in the days when the grass was objectively greener and the air was cleaner, there was no religion and its daughter science. People were creating myths, different quasi-systems of science in an effort to systematize social life and make strategies. There was no logic in them. But why would we ever be interested in the ancient myths in the 21st century, besides themes of decors and movie settings? We are intellectuals. We honor logic only, do we not? The thing is that logic is successful, but still a concept invented by Aristotle, which had his thought determined by the reality of life in ancient Greece, a lot of which are still relevant to our contemporary life. But in general, we live in a different world than he lived in. The world does not follow Aristotelian logic, no matter how hard we want it to. The world includes logic, but is not limited to it. So the ancient myths, after some work, can actually bring some light to issues that we have problems understanding and accepting logically. After all, it's not rational to throw a cultural heritage collected for 10,000 or even more years. Ancients were comparing people with animals and mythic creatures. For example, a scorpion, a creature or person that stings you in the leg. When a scorpion stings you, you don't die. It's almost painless. You just slowly lose the ability to move, develop a disturbed state of mind and fever. Spartacus is a toxic sissy. What is a sissy? In contemporary psychoanalytical terms, It's a person that offers him or herself as an object of sexual pleasure for the other. In the ancient tradition, it's a sick fish. Why Spartacus is a sissy can be clearly seen here. And here. Why does he throw baskets from the cliff? It does not help anyone in the situation. The only outcome of this is that he will get spanked. He is asking for it. Persons that are in the state of mind of the sick fish often asks for it, for some kind of violence towards them. They need it from time to time to feed the illusion that he or she is special and everyone in the world is there to torture him. The second reason is to involve others in a specific process that we reviewed in our other videos. If you ever go fishing, you probably have seen a sick fish. They are an easy prey. You can catch them with your bare hands. They are like asking for it. But the outcome of it is that you will get a parasite inside you. Many people could probably recognize themselves in this description. Of course, there are no such people viewing this video today. But if there were, they might have said, "Well, it's just my mask. I always wear a mask. I was born as a 4th level enlightened one. I had no need to defeat fear and become honest on the 1st level. Think straight, become a master in something, without being carried away by it, and defeat clarity on the 2nd level. Get rid of the ego on the 3rd level." They can say that, but can they enter the collective mind and serve as a bridge for others? A rose thought in the other that comes on the 4th level, or do they just pretend to be more important than they are? The difference is clear. Zeros pretend to be more serious than they are. 4th level initiates pretend to be less serious.
Thanks for sticking with the case.
I can't do anything else.
If anyone is heartless, it's not House MD. If anyone is obsessed with fancy appearance, it's not the Detective Poirot. If anyone is a cheapskate, it's not Batiatus. If anyone is a womanizer and interested in simple plebeian pleasures, it's not Caesar's master Gracchus.
Make an old-fashioned sacrifice for glamorous success.
I thought you had reservations about the gods.
Privately, I believe in none of them. Neither do you. Publicly, I believe in them all. Greetings!
Their masks are not their personal choice. An initiate wears a mask according to the collective mind and its needs. For example, Gracchus does not indulge in his personal comfort as it might look. It looks like he enjoys tasty
You and I have
food.
a tendency towards corpulence. Corpulence makes a man reasonable, pleasant.
But all the cooks in his house are females.
It's well known that even your groom and your butler are women.
It's not a secret that the best cooks are males, but Gracchus had to hire females. Why did he have to do it is being described later in the video.
I keep these women out of my respect for Roman morality. That morality which has made Rome strong enough to steal 2/3 of the world from its rightful
Now we will
owners,
focus on why
founded
Gracchus
the
gives 2 million sesterti to Batiatus and Varinia, and then commits suicide.
It is now, saves them for the journey. Yeah. Prettier.
As it was said, Gracchus's objective was Caesar's initiation.
Pompey and his legions from Spain.
I could raise 500 men and bring the whole lot of them in.
Don't make a fool of yourself.
For that purpose, he and his pupil Batiatus started and supported Spartacus's rebellion. It wasn't shown in the film how exactly Gracchus started the rebellion, but it's clearly shown that he supported the rebellion all the way until it gets desirable for Caesar's initiation magnitude.
6 cohorts will more than do the job. Will you accept such a charge, Glabrus?
I accept the charge of the Senate if the Senate truly charges me. The garrison of Rome stands ready.
Here, he deliberately sends an unworthy commander to suppress the rebellion. In fact, just to fuel the rebellion even more and supply it with some ammo.
It's not a serious disturbance. Glabrus will be back.
Maybe.
It is safe to assume that Gracchus wanted the rebellion, aided in its start, and helped it grow.
Hail Glabrus! Hail Glabrus! I hope he returns to such applause. Oh, one fat one, Fimbria.
So who are the rebellion's leaders?
Oh, Varinia.
Spartacus and Varinia. They are not some random people. They are part of the project, and their toxicity and resentment are part of the plan. Even their so-called love is part of the plan. The kitchen is on the training ground territory, not in a common place. It was made sure that Varinia would spectate the training. The choice for Verinia and other women in the kitchen is simple: spectate and study. One can pick valuable lessons from any professional training, or spectate and despise. Verinia's choice is obvious. Moreover, she was picked to serve, not sexually of course, all initiates in the training camp, including the guest Crassus, Gracchus, and others, where she would face the same choice, and her resentment would go to the moon, making the true hydra of resentment of her. Being full of anger and resentment is her choice, but the magnitude of that was managed by the initiates. It's very important to understand as a single person can't grow, in a negative sense, like that by himself, without contact with initiates. That's counter-initiation. No wonder Crassus wanted her so much as his wife, as he wanted to rule Rome and needed a proper woman with him for that. Flawless and innocent on the surface, but nothing like that underneath.
But she's an impossible woman.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, well, beautiful. The more chains you put on her, the less like a slave she looks.
Proud.
Proud.
Some more on this dissonance technique in this video. Many work hard to become as demanded as Verinia is, wearing their asses off, almost literally, applying tons of makeup, fancy clothes, living a promiscuous life. Well, good luck to them, as it will never happen. They are not even able to spot an initiate to go through counter-initiation. Here is how Batiatus made Spartacus fall in love with Verinia.
Spartacus.
Spartacus.
Notice how Spartacus behaves towards her initially. Like a consumer. And after a little talk with Batiatus, he acts differently.
You must take her.
Go away.
What will she think of you? Indeed, what will I think?
He doesn't touch her sexually anymore. Such a quick change. He is in love now. There might be an opinion that Batiatus came to Spartacus's cell to peep after him and Verinia, to masturbate or something. Like he has some issues with women, can't get laid, and has to peep after someone. Like his students can get laid, but he, the master, can't. Ridiculous. It's hard to believe, but outside of our subscribers list there are people who might think so. No, he didn't come to peep. He actually gave Spartacus advice to stop being obsessed with women all the time, to take it simple.
You have one now, Spartacus. You must take her.
Go away.
What will she think of you? Indeed, what will I think of you?
Don't forget that Batiatus is not a random guy. He has a gladiator school, and his duty to raise warriors.
Those who are about to die salute you.
Preferably invincible warriors that would face death on the arena, and in case they won't flinch, they will get freedom, would stop
Some of them
being a slave.
even attain freedom and become trainers themselves. Marcellus.
And Batiatus is doing his job. Invincibility comes with an adequate mind. Students in Batiatus's school were taught not only how to handle a sword, but how to think efficiently.
Taught to use your heads. A good body with a dull brain is as cheap as life itself.
They were taught tactics and geography.
From Brundusium. Here's Rhegium. Pompeius lands at Brundusium tomorrow. If we engage Lucullus, Pompey will have enough time to march against our rear.
It's impossible that Spartacus got this knowledge in the mine, and Batiatus is a good teacher. He knows the methods.
Approximately half our graduates live for 10 years.
But Spartacus came to be stronger. Didn't let Batiatus plant any thought in his mind. Just look at his face. So much resentment on it. But one may ask what an adequate mind, obsession with women, and martial arts have to do with each other. The thing is that you can't read a book or take a lesson in martial arts or business and so forth, and become a good fighter or businessman and so forth. The human mind is not a list of paper where you can add any information and read it back whenever it is needed. The human mind is not even an indexed database like we have on computers. It's much, much more complex. There are several advanced models of the human mind. Layered onion-like, rhizomatic, so-called neural network, and fractal. A lot of things are interconnected, and if something in the big nodes is off, like your beliefs about men or women, the whole of your behavior goes off. No matter how hard you try, learn new stuff, or how accurate the new knowledge. Let's say that one thinks that a typical woman is extraordinary, which is the same misogyny where every woman is worthless, but in reverse. Such a person will always lose a battle to the one that calls things by their proper name, just because his system of values is broken. Jacques Derrida, in his work Voice and Phenomenon, demonstrated that the basic opposition in the minds of Western civilization people comes not from the opposition of left and right hand, or of sky and ground, but from the opposition of man and woman. According to him, this opposition is the basis of all logical constructions. Jacques Derrida is a philosopher deconstructivist. He worked exclusively with words, and what's interesting is that his thesis is also somewhat supported by physiologists who usually do not honor philosophy, that say the human brain basically evolved from the same neural system that was responsible for the reproductive function, aka sexual differentiation. Derrida's work had some consequences. Some people decided that since sexual differentiation is the basis of the contemporary world, they can abolish it by their mighty will, and things would magically change just because they want so. That is at least how gender activists justify their actions while compromising Derrida's idea. So you have to have things sorted. You can't stay indifferent in such questions. That's what you are obliged to, since you as a human being have a human mind. Yes, different high spiritual teachings say you should stay away from evaluations, but they were never intended to be available for public. They were for warriors and above only, for people who have things ordered straight in their minds. Let's see that episode again.
I've never had a woman.
Why does he talk to her? Why doesn't he let her do her job, the job that she has chosen? Why won't he quench his sexual hunger? He talks to her instead. He is obsessed. The interpretation of his obsession is simple. Spartacus is gay. Here is why. Why does he say to her that he had no woman before? Doesn't he know that a woman is promiscuous because she likes fantasies about her new sex partner? As soon as her fantasy about her new sex partner is gone, as soon as she knows him too much, she loses her interest and her heat. You don't tell the woman about yourself unless you want her to stay dry. Didn't he know that? Probably not. Probably no one told him. He is gay and other men had no respect for him, preferred not to talk with him and his kind. Of course, men don't say it out loud. Hey, you don't want to say anything real about yourself to the woman to seduce her. Well, unless it's a gay community of sexually obsessed men called the pickup school. But the message on how to treat women is clearly translated by the way men talks about women without any need to highlight the specific messages. He ruins her fantasies. The common fantasy that says each man is better than the last. He doesn't want her. She even tried to help him, took her dress off to make him shut up and take her. But no, he wants something different. Spartacus is gay. Which is actually quite normal for the leader of the slaves. And the word normal is not our evaluation of the phenomenon. It's just how it usually is. Batiatus gives him a piece of advice.
You have one now, Spartacus. You must take her.
Go away.
What will she think of you?
But instead of meditating on what Batiatus had said to him, Spartacus decides to fall in love. You can't fall in love unless you have that choice. Love is a psychotechnique to evade thinking, to betray yourself as a humankind. The love between these two was arranged, but the final choice was made by Spartacus. Here is how the arrangement looked like.
Varinia. Dionysus.
No, Spartacus.
Martial art master Marcello sends Varinia to dialysis. Marcello is not sensitive enough to see the historical opportunity, to see what's special about these two. But Batiatus, which is 2 levels above him on the initiation scale, knows, corrects him, and looks straight into his eyes. The significance of the eye contact and its dynamics between zeros and counter-initiates was reviewed in this video. The significance of the eye contact and its dynamics between initiates is left for your guess. Thanks to Kubrick for extending this long enough film for these few extra seconds, even if it cost him and the studio the viewership. Note that prior Spartacus, Varinia was assigned to Dionysus.
Varinia. Dionysus.
His story is not shown, but it's safe to assume that Dionysus was Spartacus's prototype in the project, testing ground, or a failed version. He is very much like Spartacus, full of resentment, a flop. Every man hates him.
All I want is just one chance at that big before they carry me out.
Quiet! No talking down there.
She'll get us all in trouble, just like in the mines.
Varinia knows at what cell he lives. She doesn't need a guide.
Varinia. Dionysus.
She is his constant sex partner. Moreover, Dionysus becomes Spartacus's best friend, his personal assistant. And it's not because he is useful in combat and leadership. According to science, Dionysus is trash as a warrior. All of the people in this line of prisoners are trash. Just look, they gave up without any wounds on their bodies. They are not warriors. It's a shame. Such kind of prisoners are never honored and usually executed during the war by any sane commander. So Dionysus becomes Spartacus's best friend over another reason: wife sharing. Not a surprise, as banging one girl disconnects decent men from each other and connects undecent ones. If you want to lose your friend, just have sex with his girlfriend or wife and you will lose him, or you will lose yourself. Hitler's army used that technique. They had mobile brothels, where a small number of women were serving sexually the whole battalion. Afterward, all the soldiers in the battalion were in counter-brothership, united by one vagina. It's a well-known psycho technique on the higher level of the military commandment.
Go first. I'm gonna go first. Yeah, I meant to...
You the only one left, honey?
What? Oh, yeah, I guess I am.
Well, let's get going, sugar. I got some Navy boys coming at 2.
Anyway, Varinia's love for Spartacus didn't last long.
My love, my life. Please die.
Her love was gone to this sweet poet. The fact that Varinia warms up, to say it politely, before having sex with Spartacus by thinking of the poet is shown here.
And the sea foam sleeps like a maiden at rest, and twilight touches the shape, yet still when the blazing sun hangs low.
And here.
To the gods, to the blue woods,
Through blue shadows and purple woods.
and the purple shadows,
Through blue shadows and purple woods.
Spartacus, you frighten me.
You like him, don't you?
Antoninus.
I'm just the same as I ever was, Spartacus.
I love you, Spartacus. I love you.
Oh, I love you, Spartacus.
Moreover, Varinia's baby is not from Spartacus. Well, it is from Spartacus. But who is the Spartacus? Everyone in the crowd calls himself Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
That phrase sounds absolutely differently now, isn't it?
Oh, I love you, Spartacus.
By the way, Crassus knew that.
This is a child?
Yes.
Where is Spartacus?
Dead.
Did you see him killed?
Yes.
You're lying.
And as an act of mercy offered Spartacus to face the truth first, and last time before he dies.
Here's your victory. He'll come back. He'll come back and he'll be millions.
I wonder what Spartacus would say if he knew that the woman Varinia and her child are slaves in my household.
Spartacus is shocked. Nothing shocking the fact that Varinia and the kid are captured. Spartacus knew that all survivors were captured. He started to realize that it's not his baby. Anyways, in this episode, why does Varinia try to suggest that the baby is his baby?
This is your son. He's free, Spartacus. Free.
And why doesn't he feel any relief over the fact that Varinia and the kid are free now? It's not physical exhaustion due to crucifixion. He is on the cross for less than a day. The moment of how the rebellion has started is noteworthy. It began right at the moment when Varinia was in transfer to Crassus's mansion. We don't believe in bad coincidences, and Varinia understood that in Crassus's house she would be put in a strict order. No sex with guards, no gladiators. That's the end of the world for her. She wants to run. But notice, not all of the gladiators started to protest. Some of them are just sitting and doing nothing. Until Batiatus decides to deliver her personally.
On second thoughts, I'll deliver the girl personally. Right to Capua.
Now she is sure that it's serious. Now she is in full panic. And so on her swarm of gladiators. Now all of them are rebelling. The phenomenon of swarm behavior in action. Scientists have spent the longest time in an effort to build the theory of this, but none of their theories got recognized and make sense due to 17th century myth of the sovereign individual. Varinia is the queen, the emitter of their wishes. That's the secret power of a woman. She, so to speak, sets the trend. However, despite all power, what is a queen without a king? People don't take women seriously. Probably never did. Like it or not. Is it sexism or not? Is not our channel's focal point. Basically, a queen needs a king as a mouthpiece, as the one who would demonstrate what she wants. A complete puppet of her. Her mask. Absolutely empty and absolutely dumb. Of course, we are not talking about ancient kings. Kings warriors. We are talking about kings that we know for the last 2,000 years. You can open any study on the king's role in society. There is a lot of to read. But you will see that the most of the research agree that the role of the king is the body. Long story short, a king is a placeholder for God. His body is holy. It's filled with God. His word is a law. The king doesn't have to be strong, clever, tall, or beautiful. His characteristics don't matter. Sounds shocking and ridiculous for an untrained mind, but if you look not on the pop culture representations, but on the structure and functionality of the society, you will see how it works. A king is like hinges that allow the door to turn. The door here means the system. In the words of early 20th century social critics, a king is the body, and since he is the body, you are not. You are nobody. And since the king is not a person but a function, his body can be easily replaced with another body. That's what the well-known phrase, "The king is dead, long live the king," means. The king is a placeholder for God. But what is God? It's a relatively new concept. It's created. Created for a reason. Nietzsche said that it was created to steal the power from the human. Since God is so strong, it makes a human weak. But it's created by men. We don't need to tell you that it means that it's a phallologocentric concept that very likely suffers from misogyny and claims masculine privilege. Knowing human nature is very unlikely that a man would give the credit to someone who is above him. But what is likely? That he would try to insult some who is above him by giving credit to another, even imagined person. What does it steal from women? Something unbearable. Unbearable for men. And of course, just naming something does not guarantee precise representation. After all, it can be anything behind it. Behind Spartacus, there is Varinia. Spartacus is her puppet. He would do everything for her, would execute each of her secret wishes. What's wrong with him in this episode? Where does his aggression come from? His reaction is not typical. If he wants to tear his masters apart, why does he stand still moments later? Batiatus said nothing insulting towards him. He is not laughing about Spartacus's virginity. There is nothing funny or wrong about that. What he is laughing about is how Varinia treats Spartacus. She treats him not like she treats guards, but only because of sex with guards is prohibited, and sex with gladiators is her duty. She disregards gladiators, but flirts with the guards. Spartacus, as a puppet of any woman, immediately mirrors that, displaying no interest to her as to a person. A woman's puppet will act and feel differently, depending on the mindset of a particular woman he is with. Of course, there are no such persons viewing this video and subscribing to our channel today that feel and act differently with different women. Their state of mind is clear with anyone. But outside of this group of persons, there are actually a lot of people who don't know what they are, and have no control over what they feel. Batiatus laughs and hints what person Varinia is. She immediately recognizes what he is about. Her resistance kicks in.
I'm not an animal.
Neither am I.
She wants to show him that he is wrong, just because they are always wrong. Tries to make herself believe that she treats a god differently because she loves him. That she is not an animal and able to love. To love even the worst gladiator. She is full of anger, and her puppet Spartacus immediately displays that. Didn't he know that the only outcome of this aggression is that they will take her away as punishment?
You'll have to take her out of here, Marcellus. You may not be an animal, Spartacus, but this sorry show gives me very little hope that you'll ever be a man.
Note how the popular hypothesis that a human always acts in his own interest fails here. Total puppet. He is exactly what is needed for the rebellion project. Now they both are going to demonstrate love in the teeth of Batiatus and serve as an idol for the rebels. But only up to the moment where Varinia gets pregnant and gives birth. As soon as a woman gets her own baby, she gets locked on it. As the baby is absolutely defenseless and dependent, she can do whatever she wants with it, tell it whatever she wants, and it won't argue, supporting every fantasy she can imagine, as an attentive listener. In that state, she does not need a man or an initiate to support her fantasies anymore. Member of the Masonic-like order B'nai B'rith, Sigismund Shlomo, aka Sigmund Freud, knew that phenomenon and tried to explain it to the public as a metaphor of penis envy and its fulfillment. And since his information came from an esoteric source, came as a myth, it was very intuitive to everyone, very disturbing at the same time, and simultaneously extremely obscure. It was clear that Freud was onto something, but no one was sure about what, applying the knowledge wherever they can, until it became a joke, and completely forgotten, making everybody happy again. However, it is shown that Gracchus was aware of the phenomenon. He, as the first senator, set the final battle day to the time as soon as the childbirth occurs. As soon as she gets a baby, she forgets about her slaves, and they get obliterated despite being pretty successful in their previous local battles. Gracchus's prediction is not some sort of magic. He calculated the fact that while Varinia was at service in the sex industry, Batiatus provided her with contraceptives. But as soon as she runs away and recovers from herbal tonic or whatever they used as contraceptives back then, she would immediately get pregnant under some bush with some slave. After the battle was over, Gracchus gives her the citizenship, so she would completely disassociate herself with her slave army, wishing them dead.
I love my life.
She always wished them dead, but now especially.
Please die.
Her citizenship was very much needed, as she could kill her baby, throw it into a ditch, as many mothers do, and start to seek for new Spartacuses, igniting new pockets of rebellions among the slaves. Those pockets would be quickly liquidated, but there was enough blood already spilled. The priesthood usually just liquidates the queen of the rabble as soon as the project is fulfilled, but that was not needed for Caesar's initiation. Varinia would be needed in the final chapter of Gracchus's project, which happens after he ends his life.
Well, you're going to Aquitania. The governor's one of my innumerable cousins, and his senatorial pass is valid in all the known world.
Why do I have to go to Aquitania?
Because I asked you to.
And no, Gracchus didn't kill himself out of envy to Crassus. The real reason is for you to discover as a homework. Neither Gracchus or Crassus fight for a high title. They contradict each other, but only at the surface. On the deeper level, they do the same thing. It's only in bad leftists' minds the good leaders feed each other with sweet cakes all days and all nights. The subconsciousness of initiates of that level is open. Listen to what Crassus says to Caesar.
Did you fear him, Crassus?
Not when I fought him. I knew he could be beaten, but now I fear him. Even more than I fear you.
Me?
Yes, my dear Caesar. You.
That level of honesty, it almost sounds like vulnerability. They have nothing to hide from each other. The mask is only for public. And Gracchus was not the only one who ended his life for the greater purpose. Master Marcello died too easily, though. How is it possible that the man that beats armed Spartacus with a small stick dies in a bowl of soup? The thing is, Marcello is an initiate, the master. He really cared for his students. He knew what kind of a man Spartacus is, and his duty was to reveal it to his students. Spartacus is the worst of the worst. If there is anything dishonest he can do, he will do it. He kills his master. Killing your master, the person that made you and gave you everything you have, is the worst crime one can commit. That is unforgivable. That is a crime against your own nature. It is beyond salvation. And Marcello reveals that modestly and without breaking a sweat. A perfect example of the hero. Definitely, a good amount of his students would rethink what Spartacus is after that, and would not join the rebellion, which is certain unhonorable death. As an initiate, Marcello could not go for this, refuse the call of history, just as Batiatus couldn't give up all of his property, and Crassus, letting Varinia escape, giving up his 5th level initiation challenge. Slaves, of course, see Crassus as a typical hungry-for-power tyrant, projecting their own ambitions to him, forgetting that Crassus easily gave up his Senate membership as an apology for his tactical mistake.
Glabrus is my friend, and I will not dissociate myself from his disgrace. I now lay down the command of my legions and retire to private life.
One of the reasons why slaves see Crassus as a tyrant is that he ends the life of Draba. Batiatus made Draba, so to speak, a spiritual leader among the slaves in the camp. He is the only one whose head was shaved on a daily basis, and who is allowed to wear a coat like some kind of monk. These two things is enough for Zeros to praise someone as a highly spiritual person, or like in contemporary society. Spartacus is a sycophant. A resentment figure is always a sycophant. Spartacus immediately recognizes Draba among the others and starts sucking up to him immediately.
What's your name? You don't want to know my name.
We won't dwell on the role of Draba, only mention that Crassus didn't kill him. Draba was already dead. The spear got him into the red zone. This episode reveals that.
You get an instant kill on the red. Here. Here. Always remember, go for the red first, because if you don't, your opponent will. The blue, you get a cripple. Here. Here. Second rule, go for the cripple before the slow kill. There's a slow kill on the yellow.
The information from this episode is never used anywhere in the film, and Kubrick doesn't waste viewers' time on useless episodes. This episode here is only to hint that Draba was already dead, and Crassus, despite Draba's attempt to kill him, forgives Draba and ends his suffering with a lot of compassion. The subliminal message of the significance of why Marcello picks red paint to distract Spartacus from a woman is for you to decipher as homework.
Girls. All right, slave. Go ahead and look.
The other thing that makes slaves think that Crassus is a tyrant is that he interrupts Batiatus here and orders to spank him.
Ugliness, a genius would be able to sell them.
Flog that scoundrel out of camp.
Like he has a tyrant so angry of Batiatus contradicting him, so he orders to spank him. However, Batiatus himself does not think so.
Stripes on my back than a zebra. Every time I touch my wounds, they sing. Sing like larks. But in spite of that, I think I found something that I never had before, with all my wealth.
So, he realizes that now that Varinia, after seeing him being spanked, would see him as Crassus's enemy, her friend, so to speak. Which is very into the hands of Batiatus.
Well, you're going to Aquitania. The governor's one of my innumerable cousins, and his senatorial pass is valid in all the known world.
Why do I have to go to Aquitania?
Because I ask you.
As it's him who is going to manipulate her after the Spartacus project is over. Batiatus and Varinia are going to live in some mansion, and through her emotional state, Batiatus will control the emotional state of Zeros among the Roman citizens. For example, if it is going to be needed to make citizens happy, he will lock her, let's say, in a stable, and realize her secret wish of sex with a horse, or some other pervert stuff that people find very disturbing, just as attracting. It's always a scandal when it's discovered, especially when it's not some old, grown perverts involved, but even kids are attracted by this. Like this case of so-called Elsa-gate, clearly showing that there is a layer of human psyche where something happens. That active, from early childhood, that can be driven by someone that we prefer not to think about. Or the opposite example, let's say there is a pox epidemic rising in Rome. It's needed to make citizens believe that pox is bad. It's not obvious for Zeros. Zeros are Zeros because they have no own mind and follow what contemporary culture call the trend. Otherwise, there is a great chance that citizens would follow their local matriarchs that are happy to see the terrible things that pox causes, as it happened in Europe during the Black Plague pandemic, when people were making fests and planting contaminated rags to neighbors. You can't allow that, so to make people feel unhappy, Batiatus would have to make Varinia feel unhappy. To make that, all he has to do is to make her study something. She immediately would feel bored and depressed, and so the citizens would feel. That is the role of the First Lady in government, or any other big organization. It's a public information. You can easily find the evidence of the weird second life of high-ranked public women. It just requires some analysis. We can't post nudes on the channel, but you can lurk for leaks on figures like, let's say, Goldman Sachs' vice president's wife and daughter, Margaret, the Princess of England, Eva Peron, and last but not least, Russia's representative, the favorite of the crowd, the lady of 2018 Football World Cup. That is the reason why Gracchus has so many women in his mansion.
It's well known that even your groom and your butler are women.
Note that all women are different. Usually, a womanizer picks a like kind of women for his sexual pleasures, if he has a choice. And Gracchus definitely had many choices. But he picked different characters for different types of citizens.
You have too great a respect for the purity of womankind.
Exactly.
However, Batiatus has managed to nurture a real big one compared to Gracchus's harem. The traces of the topic of mass control through a woman can be seen in many sources starting from Sophocles' Odyssey, an encrypted story of events that happened beyond the eyes of the public can see. The legend of Perseus beheading Medusa, the woman that hypnotizes people, and using her power against enemies. Ancients did not know Aristotle and the follow-up tradition of numeration and making tables, but in contemporary words, Perseus can symbolize the fifth level of initiation. And it's not just some abstract myth. Gracchus's Spartacus project and Crassus's execution of it had some serious practical effects.
If we punished every commander who made a fool of himself, we wouldn't have anyone left above the rank of centurion.
Someone may ask, what was it all for? Why did the poor slaves have to die? Why couldn't they let them go? The rebellion revealed a list of serious problems in Roman society, starting from poor management to serial killers staying unnoticed by authorities.
Too many women. What's wrong with women? I can handle a knife in the dark as well as anyone. I can cast spells and brew poisons. And I've made the best shrouds for 7 Roman masters.
Second, they were not poor slaves. This woman had poisoned to death 7 people, and no one had noticed her. Now, all these silent murderers, spreaders of diseases, baby killers, and all who have sympathies for them, have gathered together by Verinia's call under Spartacus's command. And the third, you can't let them go. Where should they go? To another country? It's not good to drop your headache to others, unless you have strategical options like the United States had when they went to war with Vietnam and were recruiting bloodthirsty elements to die there, or like Russia and Ukraine currently maintains a zone where their fascist elements kill each other, cleaning the population of both countries from themselves. A similar story, according to another great director and storyteller, James Cameron, happened in the 20th century. His work has been already reviewed on our channel. Make sure to check it out, and don't forget to subscribe and press that like button.